All right, so Polaris has recently added yet another razor to its side-by-side lineup, and I'm talking about the Turbo S Velocity. Now that leads to the question, is this low-cost Turbo S worth the money it saves? Let's take a look. So in one of our most recent videos, someone left a comment, and I quote, "Please wear a hat next time. I can't see the machine with the glare from your head." Well, locked and load, this one's for you. You're welcome. All right, so over the course of the last year or so, you might have heard me talk what almost seems like smack about the Polaris RZR Turbo S. And that's not because I don't think it's one of the most amazing and capable machines currently on the market.
I mean, after all, it has won 3 world championships.
Really, the only negative thing I have to say about it is the price point for this is pretty unrealistic for the average off-road enthusiast. Now, one thing I absolutely love about Polaris is their ability to have such a massive lineup, which really opens up the market for so many more people. But Polaris has done this once again, and this time they're trying to make the sweet, sweet Turbo S a little bit more practical to its future buyers with a lower cost.
Definition of low cost.
And I quote, "Able to be purchased or acquired at relatively little cost." So what I hope to do in this video is identify some of the differences between the Turbo S and the Turbo S Velocity. So, you know, you can determine if it's the right vehicle for you or the right vehicle to fantasize about, because it's still ridiculously expensive. So as always, I do like to make these videos a discussion. Leave some comments down below. Let me know if, 1, what your thoughts of this are overall, and 2, if you were considering getting the Turbo S, would you consider taking the price bump down and getting the Turbo S Velocity? All right, so as we start to dissect the differences in these, you might notice that a lot of the specs are the same. I mean, for example, it still has the same 168 horsepower, still has the same 72-inch width, still has the same 16 inches of ground clearance. It still has the same 32-inch tires. In fact, quite frankly, at a glance from a distance, you might notice almost no difference between these two machines, unless you start to look closer and you notice that the LED accent lights on the front and rear are actually not there. So then what actually is different about these machines? Well, there's a few minor things, but there's what I consider 2 big changes. The first is the fact that the Velocity does not have dynamics. Now, if you don't know what dynamics is, it's Polaris's intelligent suspension system that basically tunes on the fly by making hundreds of calculations a second to adjust your suspension. That doesn't sound cheap. And if you want to know more about that, by the way, you could just type it into YouTube. There's all sorts of videos on it. But that in and of itself sounds like a good way to cut some costs. So obviously by removing the dynamic system, it left a need for shocks. And what they did was they added Walker Evans 2.5 shocks to the front and Walker Evans 3.0 shocks to the rear. Now, personally, I have basically little to no experience with Walker Evans shocks. However, I have heard that they are still very, very good shocks. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any, or what your thoughts on them are. All right, and the second big thing they took away was ride command. So there goes your GPS, there goes your sweet cameras. Basically, all the awesomeness that's packed into that screen in the front of your cab is now gone. And then, of course, they did take away some other things as well. For example, the LED accent lights, like I previously mentioned. They took away the roof from the top. They took out the Sparco steering wheel. It's really just more of a generic Polaris RZR steering wheel at this point. And then the lower radius rod in the back is actually straight now versus the new curved one that you'd see in the 2019 Turbo S. All right, so by making all these changes, how much money is it actually going to save you? So the Turbo S Velocity 2-seater is going to MSRP in the States for $25,399. Hey, make sure we throw the prices in Canadian down there as well. All right, and then the 4-seater is going to MSRP in the States for $28,399. So when we compare that to the standard Turbo S, which has a price tag of $28,199 for the 2-seater and $30,999 for the 4-seater, that's going to lead to an overall savings of $2,800 on the 2-seater and $2,600 on the 4-seater. Now, here's my concern, and maybe I'm totally wrong here, but by getting the Turbo S Velocity, you save $2,800. However, it seems like they're taking way more than $2,800 worth of goods off this machine. Now, to show this, I want to compare the Polaris RZR XP1000 with dynamics and ride command. That comes in with an MSRP of $23,599. However, if we get the Polaris RZR XP1000 without dynamics and ride command, it comes in at $18,599. That's a savings of $5,000. So here's what I think. But first, to show you this, I want to compare the 2019 Can-Am Maverick X3X RS Turbo R. Sorry, I'm just gonna step in here real quick. Why can't these companies come up with a simpler naming process? We're up to like the Can-Am Maverick X3, XMR, RS, D5, Charlie Bravo, Alpha Romeo. Come on! Sorry, you can go back to the other thing. Now, this right here could be considered the Turbo S competition from Can-Am. Now, before you try and argue me on this point and say that it's not, just so you know, this spec sheet I got right here, I got directly off of Can-Am's website comparing the two models specifically. And quite frankly, they are pretty comparable, so it does make sense. So the point is this: the X3X RS Turbo R sells for $27,299 in the States, and the new Turbo S Velocity sells for $25,399. That's a savings of $1,900. So really, I think the Turbo S Velocity was a marketing move by Polaris to bring their comparable model under that of Can-Am's. And that makes sense. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not exactly the most cost-effective side-by-side on the market, but anytime companies are going to compete for that lower price tag, I mean, it usually is us as the consumer who's going to win. In fact, think of this. Now Polaris can actually claim that they have the cheapest 72-inch long travel machine on the market, and that's definitely a win for them. So to answer the original question, does it make sense to save a couple $1,000s and buy the Velocity over the Turbo S? And obviously only you can decide that for you, but one question you might want to ask yourself: am I willing to leave dynamics and ride command off the table and save $2,800? Personally, I would consider it. I don't know if I would do it, but I would consider it, and here's why. I don't care that much about dynamics. I mean, don't get me wrong, the technology's sweet, it's awesome. Personally, I just don't care that much about it at this current date. Now, ride command, however, that one would sting a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's important to remember this one thing. Polaris has added yet another option for us as the consumer to the lineup. They didn't take anything away. They've only added another option. So with that, subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope to see you on the trail. All right, so Polaris recently released yet another, oh my gosh. Well, locked in. Ugh. They took out the Sparco steering wheel. It's more just the generic Polaris. I don't know what's going on. I'm not even halfway through this video. That was like a train wreck. Train wreck.